Hello bellezas, welcome back to my channel, or if you are new here then just welcome. Hi, my name is Brenda. I do paranormal videos here on my channel, so if that is something that you are interested in, please consider subscribing down below and turn on your post notifications so you do not miss when I post another video like this one. Now with all of that being said, let's go ahead and jump right into today's video. Alright, hello everybody, hello. I am glad to be back doing some videos, so I hope that you guys are ready to listen to some spooky stories. And as you can tell by the title, today we are going to be reading some stories about people's encounters with La Llorona, which is a very popular urban legend or myth, whatever you want to call it, in Mexican folklore. And of course, if you guys don't know, La Llorona is basically the weeping lady, and the legend is told in very different ways. I think there's maybe like 3-4 different stories, but it's basically about a woman who fell in love with a man who was rich, and she had I guess he was married as well in some stories, and she basically has kids with him, and then he ends up not wanting to leave his wife for her, and she has like a whole breakdown, and she ends up drowning her kids, and immediately she sees what she did and she knows that it's wrong, and she immediately regrets it, but it's too late. Her kids are already dead in the river and she can't do anything about it to bring them back, so she also drowns herself or kills herself in some way, and then her spirit is forever condemned to be looking for her children. And she goes around different rivers wailing and crying, saying "Ay, mis hijos," looking for her children. And it is a very eerie tale that always, no matter how many times I've heard it, no matter how many stories I've heard of people's encounters with La Llorona, I will forever have a chill run down my spine, and I will always be very intrigued with people's stories about her and, hearing her. Even my own family has their stories from, being at my great grandma's rancho and hearing her, because, it's always in these isolated areas where nobody else is around and there's a body of water, a river, whatever. And people from all over hear her, like not only Mexico, they hear her in Texas and the South, any of the states that are in the South of the United States, Arizona and Vegas and California. And I guess she makes her rounds everywhere, but I'm guessing it's because, she is looking for her children, so she's gonna look through all the connecting rivers in, Mexico and the United States. So that's basically the gist of it. If you guys want to hear more about the story in like a little bit more detail, I do have a video on it. I think I did a video on the actual legend of it, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know, I've done a lot of videos, girl, so I forget. So, but if I did make a video, I'll link it. Is the I here or here? I can never remember, but I'll link it there for you guys. And anyway, without further ado, now that I'm done talking at like high speed because I'm nervous. I'm always nervous when I record. It's a problem, and I don't know if I'll ever get over it. But anyway, oh my god, I can never get to the point. I am going to read the stories for you guys, okay? Give me a second. A couple of these are from Reddit, and some of them are from an article that I read. So if you wrote this story, all credit to you. These are from Reddit, these are from other users, and these are their stories, okay? But they're on a public platform, so just saying. Alright, so let's start with the first story. It says, "My mother's family is Hispanic, and we have wonderful family reunions every summer. One of these times, my cousin made a lovely trivia game that had several questions about my grandmother and her siblings. It was all very fun, and I enjoyed learning things about my great aunts and uncles. But one of the questions struck me as odd, and the question was, quote, when she was young, she had a pet chicken that would speak to her. I thought it was a little strange, but the game went on. My mother happened to be the one to answer that question, so I asked her about it later in the day. I asked about the chicken, and my mother told me that my great aunt did indeed have a chicken that she would speak to, and it would speak to her. I laughed a bit about it, but I could tell that my mom was serious. My grandmother was sitting nearby and chimed in. She told me that my great aunt had always been very sensitive to certain things. My grandmother never doubted that my aunt was talking to the chicken, but she was unsure who was talking to my aunt. At this point, I was very intrigued and had a small case of the heebie-jeebies. Then my grandmother told me a story that made my blood run cold in the middle of an outdoor July picnic. She asked me if I knew the legend of La Llorona. It was unfamiliar to me, so a tale was told. There is a legend of a weeping woman called La Llorona. The legend tells of a beautiful woman named Maria who married the most handsome man and had his children. Her husband lost interest in Maria and would only visit to see his children. One day, in a jealous rage, Maria pushed her children in the river where they were swept away and drowned. Regretting her action, she dove in after them, but only drowned herself. Maria wandered the earth after death in search of her children. This legend was often used as a cautionary tale to warn children not to stay out at night or to play near water alone. La Llorona will take them away. I loved the tale, but wasn't quite sure what it had to do with the chicken. My grandmother stated that sometimes when you attract spirits, you are born with the ability to perceive them. I was perplexed, but she went on with the story. She said that when they were children, they lived near water. My aunt, who spoke to the chicken, was only an infant. My great-grandmother had laid my aunt in her crib, which happened to be near a window that faced the water. After a little while, my aunt began to cry. My great-grandmother walked into the nursery and froze. A black figure was reaching through the window and reaching for my aunt. My great-grandmother, being a devout Catholic, began invoking the name of Christ. The figure recoiled from my aunt and out of the window. My great-grandmother watched the entity walk along the wall and recede into the water. La Llorona had tried to take my aunt. That is so creepy. Oh my god, sorry, my jingly thing. I love the way that this was written. It did give me the chills as well, because can you just imagine having seen like a black figure just kind of reaching in, trying to take your kid? Like, oh god, that makes me so scared. It reminds me of, I always have things that remind me of scenes. Okay, I'm sorry, but it reminds me of that. The way that I'm picturing it is that scene in Insidious where she hears like the cackling from the baby monitor and she goes into the room and she sees that somebody's standing like in front of her baby's crib, and she immediately like books it to the crib to grab her baby. She turns the light on and there's nobody there. She's like full panic mode. That's what I am picturing in my head. Oh my god, that was so creepy. What a good start, right? Let me know what you guys thought about that one. That one was scary. Okay, let me pull up the other one. Alright, so this is the second story. And he says, I am not as an experienced writer as many as the others on here, but I'll give it my best. This happened to my ex-wife and I. It was during the summer when my family decided that we should all take a trip to Mexico to visit family. I was about to join the Marine Corps, so my mother wanted for me to go see my family just in case something bad were to happen. Ominous. At the time, I was with my pregnant girlfriend who would later become my wife and then my ex-wife. Okay. Since she was pregnant, I didn't want to leave her alone, so I bought her a ticket so she could come with as well. Her being Caucasian with blonde hair and hazel eyes made everyone around my grandma's house curious, and a lot of our extended family came to see the beautiful American girl. After greeting everyone, we all started to talk about what had been going on since we had left. My girlfriend was sitting next to me, having me translate parts of the conversation. One of my aunts who knew I was into the paranormal brought up the subject of La Llorona, aka the Wailing Woman. My mom quickly told my aunt to shut up since she knew that it would get me both interested and scared regarding it. But I was able to push my aunt to keep on going. I mean, I was going to be a Marine after all, and I couldn't let a silly myth scare me. She proceeded to tell us about how whenever she would sleep over at my grandma's house, at which we were currently at, if she stayed up late enough, she would be able to hear her wails, the wails of La Llorona. My mom rolled her eyes and jokingly pushed my aunt. The subject died from there since one of my other aunts started to talk about her son and whatnot. Seeing at how serious everyone had gotten for a brief moment, my girlfriend nudged me and asked what we were talking about. I told her the myth of the wailing woman, about how she drowned her children in a river and was destined to walk along all the rivers of Mexico looking for her dead children. She of course laughed, not really buying any of my paranormal stories. That night, my parents decided that my girlfriend and I should stay at our old house where I had grown up, since we were both adults and needed our own space. The house was currently being worked on, so the bedrooms had no doors or working lights. The only doors the house had were the ones that led into the outside. They were fairly new, but they were your standard metal flimsy doors that a kick or a punch could make it rattle throughout the house. Inside, we had to use a candle and a flashlight for our light source. I remember we even used a bed sheet as a temporary door to give our room a little bit more privacy, even though it was only the two of us in the house. As the night went on, my girlfriend and I stayed up talking, and eventually we both fell asleep. I don't know at what time exactly, but something woke me up. I didn't have a cell phone, and my watch at the time was really cheap, so I wasn't able to tell what time it was. Looking down, I realized that my girlfriend had stolen the covers, so I slowly tried to steal some back. As I was debating on closing the window that was located right above our heads, I heard a long wail. It was a long, distorted wail. I could hear the old raspiness in her voice, like as if she had been yelling for such a long time that her throat was getting ready to give out. But what confused me was that her wail sounded like as if it was being played through an old gramophone. I don't know if it was the scratchiness of her voice or what exactly, but it sounded like an old creepy record playing over and over. She was wailing her trademark, "Ay, mis hijos," or "Oh, my children." That wail was what made her infamous, not just in the paranormal community, but with most people living in the rural parts of Mexico. My girlfriend started to stir and woke up. I don't remember if I woke her up on purpose, but either way, it was a dick move of me to do so, since she would also get to hear the wails. I was both excited and scared shitless at the same time. A cold chill traveling down my spine just reinforced my fear. The wails grew louder, making it seem like as if she was slowly heading towards us. Side note, there is a myth that if you hear the wails close, she's actually far away, but if you hear them far, she might be somewhere near you. My girlfriend asked me with a half smile, "What the hell is that?" Thinking I had asked my aunts to scare us. I just mentioned for her to be quiet and listen. Hearing my tone of voice, she knew that something was wrong. Another loud wail passed by, echoing inside the house. My girlfriend started shaking, terrified of what could be outside of our house. I had my left arm under her head, and I could feel tears run down from her face to my arm. Each time the wail came, she would shake a little, and at the same time I would hold her close. The wails eventually came to a peak where it sounded like as if she was outside our window. Doing the only brave thing I knew, I pulled the covers over us and tried to remain as still as we could. The wails eventually faded out, and just as we thought that she had gone, we heard two wild dogs viciously fighting and slamming against our outside door. My girlfriend had grown attached to the stray dog that used to walk around my grandma's farm, so while we were staying there, he would always sleep on the outside door to wait for us and greet us whenever we would come out. The dogs, or at least what we thought were dogs, fought for a good minute, slamming against the door, snarling and barking at one another. Then, as sudden as the fight started, it stopped. We attempted to stay up for a while longer to see if we heard anything else, but eventually sleep took over us. The following morning, we talked about what had happened. We walked outside to meet our stray dog, but he was gone. All that was left was stirred up dirt from the fight that had happened the night before. We never got to see that dog the rest of the trip. He would usually come around, but we just told ourselves that maybe he found a place with better owners who would feed him better. This all happened around 2008, and still to this day, whenever I pick up my daughter, I would ask my ex about what happened in Mexico, but she doesn't like talking about it. I haven't been to Mexico ever since, and I don't want to start anything political, but California was part of Mexico, and there have been rumors that some people around Tijuana and Southern California have heard the wails of a woman. That's the end of it. And yeah, as I said in the beginning, she travels. It's like she travels through different parts of the United States, and people hear her all over. And that story was really good. I like how his wife or his ex-wife went from being like, somebody's playing a joke on us, right, to like crying because she was so scared. I was like, same girl. I always try to find reasonable explanation for anything scary that happens before I jump to conclusions, because then I actually genuinely get scared. So yeah, very good story. I really enjoyed that one as well. Here is a third one. It says, this story takes place after the first incident with the woman known as La Llorona. Not much happened after the first time I heard her. An incident occurred with my aunt about a year after my encounter. According to my aunt, they were sleeping and suddenly there was a horrible sound coming from the ditch located in front of their house. There is a street in between the ditch and the house, but her house and the ditch are really close to one another. It was about 2:30 a.m. when my aunt was awakened by a screaming woman coming from the ditch. She figured maybe somebody was being hurt or attacked. She walked out to the front yard looking towards the ditch and saw there was no woman. My cousin, her daughter, walked out the front as well, asking what was happening. My aunt, of course, had no idea as the screaming grew closer. Then they saw her, a woman in a white dress. The only thing that shook them to the bone was the woman had no feet and was clearly floating. One other feature that threw them off was that this woman had no face. They both just turned after seeing that and ran inside their house. My aunt locked the door and called the police. The police showed up minutes later and took their claim seriously. El Paso PD was soon looking at the area where this woman was seen and heard screaming. The police soon returned and said there was no evidence that a woman was there. They looked at the area where the woman was seen walking, and yet not even footprints were found. One of the police officers even asked if maybe my aunt was dreaming everything that happened. The next day is when I went over to visit, and I saw my cousin like I had never seen her before. She had black bags under her eyes, and she hadn't slept since the incident. I asked her what happened, and she said she saw what my aunt saw, the screaming woman with no feet and no face. It took her a while to sleep normal again. She never heard of or saw La Llorona again, but to this day she won't deny that she witnessed something that she can't explain. Unlike my cousin, I don't have the luck of avoiding La Llorona. It was in the early 2000s when I worked here in El Paso, Texas, at a local supermarket named Big 8. One of the shifts that I worked was from 3 a.m. to 12 p.m. This store was located in the lower valley of El Paso. In the back of the store is a small ditch. One early morning at about 4 a.m. I had the back doors open and I was taking the empty milk crates outside in the back. I was working with two other guys at the time of this incident. One of the guys named R thought it would be funny to close the back doors and lock me outside as a joke. When I heard the doors close shut, I knew he was just messing around. I thought to myself I would just stay quiet and wait for him to open the doors again. I wasn't going to give in to his joke of trying to scare me. I stood by the door smiling and thinking to myself, he is not going to scare me. I could hear R laughing on the other side of the doors. I thought to myself, well, the joke's on him because I'm not scared. About 1 minute later, in the far distance, I heard screaming, and I thought to myself, it's the same screaming that I heard when I was 11 years old. The screaming got louder and closer to me. I felt a chill down my spine, and I felt that I was being watched by some unseen force. I felt a sense of hopelessness. It was a feeling unlike any other. I started pounding on the door. I yelled, "Let me in! There's somebody out here!" I pounded my fist and started kicking the door. "What the fuck? Let me in!" I could hear R laughing on the other side of the door. I started to kick the door harder. The screaming was now coming from right behind me. Just then, R opened the door and said, "What the fuck is that?" Just then, I ran inside and locked the warehouse door. R said, "Why was that lady screaming? Did she need help?" I told him that I don't think that was a lady. I told him what had happened to me when I was younger. R told me, "Jay, don't you think maybe you are cursed or she is following you?" I stayed quiet when he told me that. I couldn't work my shift normally after that. It took a few hours to get over what happened. I admit I was scared and maybe R was right. What if she was following me? There was one more incident that took place right after that. In 2015, I started working as a custodian at Cedar Grove Elementary. Behind the school is the border highway, then the Rio Grande, of course, covered by a huge metal fence that separates Mexico from El Paso. I worked the night shift from 2:30 p.m. to 11 p.m. One night, I was stuck working with another custodian until midnight. Right when we were about to leave, we do a walkthrough of the school to make sure all the doors are locked on the outside. I worked with another custodian named C. C always told me that he has never believed in ghosts. Up until that night, I can say. We walked to our cars, and just as I was about to leave, I saw that C had opened the hood of his car. Then he asked me, "Hey, Jay, can you give me a jump? My car battery is dead." I told him, "Yes, of course." Just as I stepped out of my car, a loud screaming came from the Rio Grande. All the animals in the nearby neighborhood started howling and crying. Once again, the screaming resembled a woman screaming her guts out in a hallway as it echoed all over. C looked at me and said, "Oh my God, is that a demon?" I told him, "No, C, that is La Llorona." He looked right at me and said, "No way, she can't be real." Then I said, "I have heard her before." And then C said, "Hurry please and let's get out of here." I gave him a jump, and just then we saw a Border Patrol Jeep speeding towards the screaming woman. Just then I thought to myself, I can record this and share it with the world. I took my phone out, and just as I hit record, the screaming faded away. C and I looked at each other, and he said, "What the fuck?" "Sorry, Jay, I'm leaving before that evil witch comes back to get us." We both left, and the very next day, C was telling everybody at work how he heard the witch crying the night before. That was the last time I encountered her. I don't think it's the last, as I feel that she may choose who hears or sees her. I have other paranormal stories, as I was a part of a group here in El Paso, Texas. We have investigated many historical locations. I also got the chance to investigate with Amy Bruni and other celebrities that have visited El Paso. That is a whole other story for another day. Thank you for listening, and in time, I will have more of my stories posted. Never fear. Wow, what a jam-packed story. This person obviously has had probably the most encounters. He maybe holds the record of the most encounters with La Llorona, unfortunately for him, because I can't imagine how terrifying it is to hear somebody screaming in the middle of the night, because even during the day it would be terrifying. There was like an instance where I was leaving work, and this wasn't paranormal or anything. It just, I kind of wanted to give an example of how it genuinely is scary to hear somebody screaming, obviously, because you're like, well, what is going on? Do I need to call the police? Like, do I need to do something? Or is it just somebody messing around? You never really know. But anyway, I was leaving work and I was locking up, and I had my back face to, the street or whatever, the parking lot. And somebody just was walking by and randomly just yelled out so loud and for no reason. I jumped, and I had chills all over my body, and I almost ran back inside, but I had already locked it, and all I did was slowly turn over, and it was just some lady, probably just probably somebody who's not well, walking down, and after she had screamed really loud, she kind of acted like nothing happened, and she just kept walking along. And I was so petrified, and all I did was run into my car, and I was like, what the hell? Why did she just randomly do that? It was very scary, even though it's just a normal person. So obviously, if I ever heard the wails of La Llorona, I would pee myself, probably. Who knows? But yeah, guys, that is going to be the last story, since it was a pretty lengthy one. I hope you guys enjoyed those stories because I certainly did. I love hearing people's encounters with La Llorona. Always super creepy and never fails to scare me. I love reading these stories. I love, hearing it from other people that I meet. Anybody who's Hispanic most likely has a story that they'll tell you about La Llorona if you guys bring it in conversation. I always really enjoy hearing it. But yeah, guys, that is going to be it from me for today. If you did make it all the way to the end of this video, make sure to leave a tear, like a water droplet emoji. I don't know, just because she cries. I feel like, I don't know, that's the best emoji that I could come up with. Leave that in your comment, that way I know who made it all the way to the end of the video. But yeah, guys, other than that, again, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully I will see you in the next video. Oh wait, well, I almost forgot. Hello, sorry, I'm so out of tune with my routine. But before I do end today's video, today's comment shout out goes to this person right here. Thank you so much for leaving a nice comment. As always, I really do appreciate it and it really makes my day. And if you want to be the next comment shout out, all you have to do is leave me a nice comment down below, and that's it. Yeah, guys, hopefully I will see you in the next video. Don't forget to stay safe and be kind. Bye bye.